Actually, I have one first, though, and this is for Kathleen. Aqua's in charge of, or its goal is to, help form water policy throughout the state and to kind of engage in education throughout the state. Did you hear anything particular from our economists and our public opinion research that you found surprising, or it's going to inform what you do, or is this all kind of old news to?
Well, I wish that, there it goes. I wish that the public recognized what it takes to maintain a reliable water supply. So I'm not shocked by the results of your polling, where the majority chose not to support rate increases for that purpose. But that's what we're all about, is to try to help them understand what it takes to get that water to your home and to your business. So not blown away by it, but that just gives us more of an opportunity to help to continue to educate them.
A sample of the challenge that you face when you're out there.
Very much so.
Okay, I'll go through these questions now. The state frowns on the charging more than 30% for cost recovery of fixed costs, even if the fixed cost is a lot higher. Is this policy going to change?
I don't know.
Ken, could you elaborate a little bit on what the question is? Did you?
Well, it's actually, I can speak to the importance of covering fixed costs in the industry, but I don't know that that's actually what the person asking the question was getting at. And maybe what I should say is that one of the things we hope to do with our work is to expand it to include the financial side of different rate structures, and I think that's what the person asking the question is getting at, which is that there are a lot of constraints on agencies, financial constraints just being one big category. And those constraints affect their ability to plan, it affects their ability to maintain infrastructure, it affects how much they charge customers for water. And it sounds like this particular constraint is viewed as one that is unnecessary and perhaps causing more problem than it is causing benefit. But I actually I'm not familiar with the specifics of this particular question, which is why I'm looking at my colleagues here, but perhaps none of us is.
I think that, and again, if the person asking the question, and you kind of alluded to it where you were talking about the commodity versus the fixed rate, fixed charge, that's what a lot of agencies are starting to transition to, because as we've seen as a result of the drought, and as Ken alluded to, when people started conserving, the revenue stream dropped down significantly, but the fixed costs were still up here. Hence, the drought rates or rate increases were necessary to maintain those fixed costs. And the person asking the question might have also been alluding to the Capistrano judgment and cost of service when you set your rates. So again, I encourage everyone, get to know your water district and learn while they base their rates.
Well, that was a nice segue, because the next question actually I think comes from the Capistrano decision. It says, Ken, pricing must be tied to the cost of providing service. What is the future of tiered rates?
Right, so that's had a lot of discussion in the popular press and between myself and colleagues as well, economists and attorneys and people who work in the California water policy scene. So let me preface what I'm about to say with, I'm not an attorney, but I'll give you my view of the decision and where I see things going. When we first heard about the decision, it was sort of like, oh, this blow to allocation-based rates and perhaps also increasing block rates because of the negative judgment in San Juan Capistrano. But when you read the decision closely, what you see is that the courts were saying, they actually went out of their way to say that they see the merit in these kinds of innovative price structures. But they also undoubtedly see that the people of California want it done in a particular way, and they felt that the way that it was done in San Juan Capistrano didn't meet the bar. The big question is, where's the bar? At least that's what I think the big question is, because it's one thing to say you didn't meet the bar. It's another thing to say you were really close and here's how you get there, versus you are not even in the ballpark, right? And I, at this point, don't have an answer for that question. But based on my reading of the decision, I think that we will see adjustments to how people do allocation-based rates, to how they justify that revenue cost nexus, but I don't think that we're going to see it going away. I also think that we might see, perhaps not this year, but maybe next year or later, an effort to address, the restrictions that Prop 218 places on water agencies through the Constitution. I think everybody agrees it's a very good idea for public agencies to not be able to overcharge customers, right? They're not supposed to run profits, they're not supposed to earn profits. But it's another thing to constrain them so tightly that we create this additional big problem inadvertently. And that's kind of where I think we found ourselves. So there could be an effort on the legal side to produce another option for agencies to satisfy constitutionally, but I don't think that the decision is going to prove to be the death knell of increasing block rate water pricing.
Thank you. The next one is for Kathy. Many agencies deferred the cost of some maintenance activities on their water systems to keep rates low. Is this a good idea?
No. And you see the result of this, not necessarily out in your area here, but I'm sure on the evening news, when I see LA County, and I always think it's that game that you see in the arcades where they've got the holes and the pegs are popping up and the guy's sitting there with a hammer trying to pop each one down. Well, if you look at LA streets, their poor infrastructure has had it. And so they have deferred maintenance on that, and they're paying the price. And I was speaking with someone earlier, and I was talking about rate increases, and I said, we get accustomed to rate increases if they're done incrementally on a regular basis. It's just the cost of living continues to go up in every aspect of our life. It's those that defer and don't do anything for a number of years, unfortunately, and then when they do see a red flag and they need money, all of a sudden then they're going back to their ratepayers, and they're not asking for a 3 or 4% increase, they're asking for a double-digit increase. And then the ratepayers are not happy with them whatsoever, so.
I'll tell you, we're the ones that get the call when that's the case. So we're the ones that get the call when there's this scenario of an agency hasn't raised their rates for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and it's that double-digit increase. And again, it may only be, and I don't say it lightly only, it may only be $5 or $6 a month, but which to some people isn't a lot, to some people is significant, but it's 10 or 15 or 20%, and that sounds dramatic. And all of a sudden, you're in this situation where we're called because we have to poll it, and you've got to start doing messaging and doing significant outreach because they haven't done this periodic review and this periodic increase to make sure they're recovering the costs that they need to recover. And if they were doing it on a regular basis, their customers wouldn't be up in arms and they wouldn't be protesting. So I think it'd be much smarter to do it on a regular basis.
I'd just like to make one comment, and I find it fascinating, obviously just because of my passion for water. But when the drought hit, the sales of bottled water went up because there is that class of people that think that the water in a bottle comes from a different source than the water out of your tap. So they don't mind going and paying for water in a bottle, and if you were to take that bottle of water and the same amount coming out of the tap, that 12 or 16 ounce bottle of water is the equivalent of about $1,000 for that water. Whereas if you take that 12 ounces and fill it from your tap, you're less than half a cent, less than that. So people are innovative also. They're not using the water at home, but they're buying it because it's coming from another source.
Okay, why is water conservation for homeowners and not for businesses? I work in the hospitality industry.
I believe it is both businesses and homeowners. So if the person asking the question is businesses such as restaurants or businesses such as industrial processes, is that your question? For restaurants or industrial?
What happens is the hospitality industry, if you go in and you say I can save you 1.8 million gallons of water, and all you have to do is this one simple thing. There in the valley here, they say we don't need this. Who cares how much water I use? It doesn't matter. It took a lot of research. I'm a research scientist from the aerospace industry, but anyway, I did research to find out why the industry doesn't really want to conserve water. Well, number one, a lot of them have wells out here. A lot of the hospitality facilities have wells, so they don't care how much water they use. Number one. Number two, it's a tax write-off. There's so much way that we could save water in the valley from the hospitality industry out here, that even the county, I've gone to the county. I don't want to say names or anything, I'm trying to be generic. I went to a local facility that uses millions of gallons of water and say, you know, all we have to do is this one little simple thing, we don't care. Somehow we've not gotten from the public to the industrial people that use a lot of water. You know, hotels use a lot of water because they all have laundromats. I support those laundromats. That's why I have all the statistics and stuff on my computer, all their water usage and what have you, and actually to say this is what we can do to save water. It doesn't mean anything to them. What is it that we can do to educate them that it is important? And also the other thing is...
Okay, we're going to stop right there.
Yeah.
Why don't we answer that question and then we'll move on. Is there...
I would say that the hospitality industry is responding, maybe not to the level that you would like to see, but I don't believe there should not be a restaurant anywhere that you go into and there's a glass of water sitting in front of you without you asking for that glass of water.
There's a lot more water used in cleaning.
That's why you're asking for that glass of water. I agree with you. So it gets back to the water districts and it gets back to education, which is what you just said. We're doing our best and we'll continue to do better.
I just think from a hospitality standpoint, I think every hotel you go to in California has the same information to save your towels, and every restaurant you go to into California has that information about why they don't put a glass of water on your table. So I think hospitality and restaurants in California are doing their part.
Okay, and if you'd like to discuss that further, maybe you can, after the program, you could approach the folks in the lobby. Why do different agencies have different costs? Why not just one mega agency?
Local control. Again, you go back to the infrastructure, so I don't know that Coachella Valley Water District, I don't know that they've got the pipelines to get their delicious water all the way to the folks out in Santa Monica or down in San Diego. So everybody has their own source. Again, out here they've got a beautiful groundwater basin, whereas you get in some areas, they're totally reliant on imported water. They have no benefit of groundwater. So and they've got watersheds coming down to them. So everyone's different, and it requires special districts, and I say that lovingly, but they are special districts, to basically focus on the delivery of the water and the wastewater services for the respective areas.
And unfortunately for us, that's the case because our water rates are so much lower than the rest of the state.
But we'll take your rates.
The rest of the state would love to have our rate, right?
No, I mean, it just speaks to the point of why we have great, interesting results statewide, but why the results are so unique on a region by region basis, and even obviously on a district by district basis. In Orange County, we've got this beautiful groundwater basin that affords us the ability to import less water. And like this gentleman says, there's potential wells for certain customers in the valley, but San Diego, for instance, has virtually no groundwater whatsoever, and so they have to import every drop of water that they use. In Northern California, for a long bit of history, people didn't even have water meters at all. They just consumed water, no problem. They didn't care whatsoever because they just didn't have a problem with any water. They just consume whatever they wanted. So as far as California goes, we are entirely unique regions, and there's very disparate parts of the state as far as water goes. And so it's just very, very different as far as water, and very different costs as far as total water, bringing water, and we're very unique. Obviously, California, there's efforts to make California, 6 or 8 different states, so you could probably draw many more lines based upon the kinds of ways we get our water. How many watersheds are there in California? There's probably a whole lot more than that. Very different ways we get our water.
All right, moving on. This one is for Kathy and Adam. What are you hearing from around the state about messages that work in selling rate increases?
About the messages that are being used?
What is the most effective message?
Oh gosh, the water, and I've said it a number of times today, water has been undervalued. People are so accustomed to paying, in my opinion, basically nothing for water in relationship to the other utilities that they pay for. The Save Our Water program, which is a statewide program, is trying to, again, help people understand the value of water and the need for water. The message is universal throughout the state of California. That, and I'll say it again, and I'll take all the tomatoes in the room that are out there, but the cost of water is going up. I don't care where you are in the state of California. Again, it's been alluded to, some will be incremental, others are going to be more significant, but when you've got, again, all that's associated with water, it's got to go up. I don't see the cost of water going down, and I would ask my elected colleagues in the office, in the auditorium, I doubt seriously any of them would say the water costs are going to go down.
So we find that ratepayers appreciate and understand that water costs money and that there's great value in water, and that they appreciate the job that their water districts do. We do polling, we do focus groups. So when people like you in this audience come into our focus groups, we actually find that there's kind of less of an interest in identifying, where it is the costs of water come from and why water costs what it does, but more of an interest in understanding what it is that the water districts are doing for you, and quite frankly, making sure that their operations are efficient and that they are providing, quite frankly, a good value. And so when you, as ratepayers, understand that they're doing a good job and being transparent with their operations, you are much freer with your dollars. And by freer, I mean you're willing to pay a couple more dollars a month, or more dollars a year to make sure that you have reliable drinking water and reliable and pay for reliability projects like reservoirs, like making sure that the pipes are kept up. And so those are the kinds of things we find. And it's interesting, if you find in a particular agency, for instance, that they have a message that says, look, we haven't grown our employee base over the course of the last decade by more than X percent. Or if you have an agency that has some message that they can hold on to, like we get other revenue through putting cell phone towers on our above ground reservoirs, and even if it's only $10,000 a month and they've got a dozen above ground reservoirs, that's something that you as ratepayers can hold on to that says, you know what, they're doing something to offset my rates. You know, it may only be a couple pennies on my bill that they're covering over the course of all the different ratepayers, but they're doing something to offset my rates. Or they are recovered, they're not, they're requiring their employees to cover a little bit more of their pension costs so that I'm not, as a ratepayer, picking up all that cost. Or the employees, you know, or didn't get a full raise. Sorry for the employees of some of the water districts here. You know, they only got a 2% raise last year, not a 5% raise last year. Messages like that resonate with ratepayers, so that the ratepayers understand that the agency is being efficient with their dollars and making sure that they know that their rates aren't going up entirely because of, let's say, employee costs. So little messages like that we test really make those slides pop and make people excited about, maybe not excited about the idea of their rates going up, but make them more comfortable with the idea that, okay, I'm going to contribute a little more to the cost of water because my water district is being efficient with my dollars.
Okay, we have, I've got a whole bunch of good questions here, but we're running out of time, and I'm getting told we have time for one more. And it goes back to messaging, and I'll just read it and then try to interpret it. How is ratepayer perception impacted by assurances by districts of an abundance of water? So there's a certain amount of tension out there, and I think particularly in the Coachella Valley, where on one hand we're telling people to conserve, on the other hand we're approving development and having the assurance that, you know, that there is enough water to take care of all our needs. So how do you see that tension playing out?
Maybe I'll jump in with a quick comment about messaging and what I can say from an economic standpoint. I have a colleague who works on water economics for a university in Canada, and he conducted a survey to try to figure out if there was, to what extent there was a link between understanding of current water issues, which might be your perception of water abundance or water scarcity, and your efforts to conserve water in your home. And so the idea was that if you're better educated about the real circumstances that we're facing, that you'll be more inclined to undertake the behavior that your water agency might be asking you to undertake. And he couldn't establish any link. So as an educator, I'm a little bummed out about this. But interestingly, what they did find, and this paper hasn't yet gone through peer review, so you can keep that in mind, but they found a link between the number of different times and places where you had seen messages about water conservation and your inclination to conserve water. So based on that study, it's more about advertising than it is about education. It's almost like we need a really good, you know, catchphrase. We either need a Smokey the Bear for water, or we need a, you know, buckle up or don't drink and drive. You know, none of us knows what the statistics are behind any of those things, right? None of us really knows what the fire risk is, or, you know, what the likelihood is that if we don't buckle up in a car, we might get hurt or worse. But we do these things, and we're all familiar with the advertising campaigns, right? So it's a preliminary result, but I think it's an interesting one, and it sort of fits with my view of how I think, you know, most customers feel, which is that we are constantly bombarded with information, and we have to kind of pick, am I going to pay attention to that? Am I going to pay attention to that? And so you're kind of, when you try to educate someone, you're asking them to invest their time in understanding this message that you're giving to them. When you advertise, you're just trying to flash something in front of them that sort of sticks in their memory. Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know, but there's a suggestion that perhaps it is.
I would like to make a comment from my own personal experience, and it was like social pressure more than anything else, because I get these water bills where it says I was inefficient or I was wasteful, and I was offended, you know, and so
abusive even, right? Abusive water use.
Yeah, well, we didn't have that one here, but you know, the amount of money, you know, as you say, in comparison to what I pay for cable and everything else wasn't that much, but there was kind of a social pressure to be responsible in terms of water use, and I think that message, at least for me, really resonated.
Just on the subject of, I think maybe what that question was getting at was this idea of, you know, perhaps how can you build, you know, new houses perhaps when we're supposed to be conserving water. And this is something we've done a lot of research on, and we recently did some focus groups on this subject. And we ended up getting support for the idea of new development in the face of the need to conserve when we explained to people that new development is significantly more water conscious than older homes, older apartments, and even the uses that would have been and were on those lands prior. So if you had agriculture, let's say, on a piece of land, and you then develop it into, let's say, an apartment building or a home, that land is now much more water efficient than the ag that was there before. Or if you tear down, let's say, an old house or an old apartment building and put new housing there, and you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're putting brand new homes there, and we're in this drought. You know, I can't believe the city council or the board of supervisors approved that new project. You know, how can they do that? Well, those new homes are, I forget the statistics, 30 or 40%, I think it's 50% actually, more water efficient because of the landscape and the interior design and the new appliances than what was there before. And that message definitely resonated in that focus group, and presumably it resonates with people beyond because it's that much more water efficient. And so.
Did any of you want to wrap up with one last comment, because we're basically out of time?
Drink from the tap.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for being such an attentive audience, and I'd certainly like to thank our panel for coming down and sharing their expertise, and I believe they'll stay around for a while and answer any additional questions you have. And thanks to John and Ashley for pulling all this together. Did you want to closing remarks?
Thanks, you.
Let's thank Bob for a great job moderating. And also want to acknowledge UCR, our host. Thank you very much. This location's wonderful. How many got a little different perspective tonight after hearing from these great panelists? A quick note, one of Kathy's slides showed different water costs up and down the state. You know, the most expensive water in the state up in the Bay Area, at their rate, it's still 0.8 of a penny per gallon. Here, it's around 0.3 of a penny per gallon right now. That's what you pay for water. And I spend $1.29 on a half-liter bottle on a regular basis sometimes if I'm going out and doing something. Also want to acknowledge the 5 agencies of CV Water Counts and their representatives here. Thanks for helping out and putting this together. And other than that, I think I got everybody in here. Thank you all, especially you, for coming and making it worthwhile. We appreciate you coming out, listening and learning and sharing information with your friends. Like us on Facebook, CV Water Counts, and otherwise, have a great evening.